This video is about teenage tragedy, a love lost to suicide 20 years ago. This video will be incredibly triggering for some, but for others it's what they need to hear. I thought long and hard about if I should put out this video, but I think ultimately I'll regret it if I don't share my story. I'm not here for your sympathy, your apologies. I'm here to let you know that you are loved by someone. And if you truly believe that you're alone and that you have absolutely no one, then you have me. I shall not bore you with the details, but I left school early in 2005. I was 16, and I spent an incredibly long summer down Church Square with the other grebos, goths, emos, teen kids, skaters, alternatives, and to be honest, even some really cool townies, later known as javs. But when that 19-year-old boy asked me out, that boy that every other boy wanted to be and every girl wanted to be with, or at the very least, wanted to be friends with, one of the coolest, most loved, most popular, most amazing people, Will came from an incredible family. His parents, Owen and Anna, an older brother, I want to say also called Owen. Will didn't so much get on with his older brother now that they were older, but still, hanging out in his house with his family was incredible. His parents were the parents that I wish I'd had. I'd love to have been part of their family. Though maybe not with the parrot. That parrot scared me, to be honest. One day, I even found Will making a coffin. It was going to be a CD holder, but I joked if it was for the parrot. He never did finish that project. Anyway, outside of being incredibly popular and having family who adored him, he was a care worker at a care home for elderly people because he genuinely just had that big of a heart. So the day that my life changed forever, absolutely no one saw coming. We had dated on and off all summer. The day before I was due to start college, he posted on MSN, "Imo, will you go out with me?" One of two MSN messages I'll never forget. Of course I said yes, and the first 2 weeks of college was me doing art, and then he'd pick me up and we'd go to his or down Church Square and hang out till late. Then I'd reluctantly go home. I was living with my grandparents at the time, probably one of the worst decisions I'd made. But on the 15th of September, I woke up. I only had one morning class till 12 and had an appointment to go get what became my signature black and pink hair done. Will had decided to phone in sick to work so that he could spend the whole day with me. Yes, in the hairdressers for over 3 hours. Hairdressers even commented about how loved up we were, or any time that he went out for a smoke, they'd pass comment on how sweet it was that he was waiting around for me, because most guys just don't do that. After the hairdressers, we went back to his. He put on SpongeBob movie for the 100th time, knowing I very much disliked SpongeBob. We took selfies together and he posted them all over MySpace, which back then, that was a really big deal. And we talked about all sorts of things. Work, life, future plans. It was so surreal hearing a teenager, 19-year-old, seemingly know what they wanted. A carer career, working his way through the ranks, his own home to get away from his brother, a family of his own someday. And then I realised it was late, I had to go. He asked me to stay over, something my grandparents would never have allowed, but I did ask, and of course it was a no. Then completely out the blue, he told me that the night before he was going to hang himself at work, but then one of the care workers came into the staff room, so he didn't. I really didn't know what to make of it. He said it in such a jokey, gestury way. I wasn't sure if he was serious or not, and then next thing I know, he was shouting for his dad to ask if he could drive me home so I could stay an extra half an hour. His dad agreed, and we spent the extra half an hour laughing and joking with his parents about cups of tea of all things. His dad drove me home. Will got out of the car with me, kissed me, told me he loved me, and before I could say anything, he got back in the car and his dad drove off. I'm not sure if you can imagine what that's like. The girl who's been bullied her whole life throughout school for being fat and ugly, and here she was being kissed and told such incredible words, and from him no less. My heart racing, my heart pounding, my heart thumping. I went inside. I showed my grandparents my hair. They, of course, liked the cut, but they didn't like the colour. And I proceeded to my room, turning on my computer and logging into MSN. Instantly hit with friends' excitement over my new hair and the pictures that Will had posted all over MySpace. He was online, and I said hi, but no reply. I messaged, "I love you too, by the way," in silence. I texted him asking him if he was okay, and eventually I got a reply on MSN. "No, forget me." My heart was racing. What happened? What did I do? I felt sick. I kept calling, but he didn't answer. I kept sending messages about our amazing day and how I felt about him, and asking why it was suddenly over. Confused, but I knew something was definitely wrong. I tried to leave the house at gone 11 p.m. My grandparents stopped me, confiscated my keys and my phone, sent me back to my room. I messaged some more on MSN, asking what I'd done wrong, and just after midnight, I'll never forget what he said, because the words that he said was, "Goodbye, Imogen. I'm off to hang myself." I didn't know what to do. It was a time when so many kids said that for attention, or self-harmed for attention. Nobody really meant it, but did he? This felt different somehow, but what could 16-year-old me do? I figured it'd be okay in the morning, and I cried myself to sleep. The day my life changed. The next morning, Friday, 16th of September, I got my phone and keys back. I tried calling and texting Will, but no answer. I figured I'd go over after college. I only had a short introduction class in the morning due to it being one of the first weeks in, so I went to college and then I came home to drop my stuff off, and as I did, a police officer followed me into my house. I mean, I assume my grandparents let him in, but it all happened so fast. My instant words upon seeing the police officer was, "No, tell me he's not dead." The police officer asked how I knew. I explained. He confirmed that earlier that morning Will had taken his own life. I had to make a statement, which later I had to read out in court in front of his entire family and a lot of our friends, and a selection of people who needed to decide if this actually was a suicide. The 19-year-old boy who overdosed, slit his wrist, and hung himself at home in his bedroom while his family were asleep in the adjacent rooms. No sooner as the police officer left, my grandmother was so apologetic. She drove me to my best friend Georgie's house where I broke the news to 15-year-old her 13-year-old sister Beth, and their mum Sue. I left them broken and devastated to go home. My grandmother was driving me back when I spotted Will's best friend Joe just sat in a field by the side of the road. I made her stop and she left. I sat with Joe for what felt like an eternity. One of our friends who knew Will's cousin had casually broken the news to Joe like it was no big deal, and Joe had just sat down and hadn't moved. We talked and we cried, and for what felt like an eternity, eventually he left and so did I. The next day was a blur. I found myself sat outside a tattoo parlour crying on the phone to Georgie when Will's aunt and uncle walked past to overhearing my call and stopped to ask if I was Imogen. They'd heard so much about me, how Will was absolutely besotted with me, and how this tragedy no one had seen coming because he just genuinely seemed so happy. We talked for a while and they invited me round to talk more if I ever needed to. I knew their son Paul, but I didn't go round. And then it hit me. I knew how close Paul and Will were, and my mind started racing. Next thing I know, I went into a tattoo parlour and I got this tattoo on the side of my stomach of William's name and a rose, at least. Well, I'd show you, but I'm not even sure it's a rose. And what font is that? Anyway, I went down Church Square to find nearly everyone was gathered. We were talking like 100, 200 kids. All just sat around telling stories and sharing memories of their time with Will. Some also had got tattoos, some had got piercings to match his, and some had brought gifts of things that were his so they could give them to me. The day passed quicker than any other I'd ever known. I went home and discovered my grandparents had confiscated every single thing that I owned. I had a bed that had been moved into my great-grandmother's room and my college and art supplies, and that was it. I was told under no circumstances was I allowed to see my friends. If I wasn't into this whole goth thing, none of this would have even happened anyway. And for the next week or two, I was drove to and from college, wasn't allowed my phone or to talk to anyone. I was being watched 24/7 and even had to check in and have tutors phone home. During that first week back, Will's best friend Joe and two other friends of ours came and got me out of class. We sat in a field and they gave me gifts, mostly random stuff out of their bags and an iceberg lettuce because they wanted me to have a plant I could eat. I'm still not quite sure what that was about, but we had an amazing afternoon, blown off college and just talking. These two girls had previously expressed a dislike towards me, and yet there they were when no one else was. A lot of people had found out that he told me that he was going to kill himself, and since I didn't stop him, I was hated by a lot of people looking for someone to blame. It took many years for me to realise even if I had stopped him that night, I couldn't the next, or the one after, or the one after that, or the one after that, or every night thereafter, and once we broke up further down the line, or have a relationship based on fear and feeling like you had to be in, not want to, plus the guilt. Georgie's mum took me, Georgie and Joe to the Chapel of Rest to see Will. So surreal seeing a dead body like that. Looked so peaceful, asleep, just laying there. Selected approved people were allowed to leave gifts in the coffin, and so I gave him a bracelet he'd previously stolen of mine and had stolen back, placing it upon his incredibly cold hand. I wasn't prepared for that. Joe joked about how I was expecting this to be one big sick joke, and Will was going to jump scare us any minute. As Will's body exhaled, and the three of us freaked out. I didn't want to leave, but I had to. Georgie's mum was under strict instructions to take me straight home. I poured myself into my art and my college, and soon enough it was time for court, and then next thing I knew it was the funeral. The funeral was insane. At the crematorium there was just so many people, so many cars, so many blue roses, and we'd all been told to wear our normal clothes, not formal clothes. The crematorium was packed inside and out. His song choices, even to this day I can't hear without crying. But this was it, and this is the point of my story. One person who truly did not know how much they were loved. Life sucked and was so alone and unhappy that they thought this was the answer. And here we are at the crematorium with hundreds, close to thousands of people, all trying to cram in, making him true to his own nature, late for his own funeral. It was beautiful seeing so many people who cared, people I knew and I didn't even know knew him. People had come from far and wide just to show up, just to be there. No one had a bad word to say, and everyone clearly loved him more than words could ever express. Post-service, Georgie, Joe and I went back to Will's house for a small wake with family and us. Of course, Paul was there and our friend Carl. We spent hours telling more stories. I didn't even know it was possible for there even to be more stories to share. I didn't want to leave, and when I was allowed, I visited the family from time to time. Sadly, they don't live there anymore, but it's been 20 years, and I've thought about them and him every single day. I hope they found peace, but I can't even begin to imagine how their lives must be, how their lives changed, how this could affect them, because I know how it affected me. Having someone come into your life and then out again, it happens so much, often without even realizing. Sometimes there's reasons, and other time it's, just time. And sometimes people change. People are constantly changing. People grow, jobs, careers, maybe they move away, have families of their own, make new friends. But this one, with Will, just changed me forever. For the longest time, I was just so angry that someone could be so loved and yet so blind, that we could have so much fun and such an incredible, amazing day, and at the end of it, go and do that. How my whole life I'd just longed to fit in, to be liked, and here this guy who was doing it so effortlessly and not even realizing how much people cared. It affected not just the people around him, but the people who loved those people. Hundreds, if not thousands of people, all connected. Because all those people had people who loved them and cared for them too. It raised such massive awareness for suicide prevention. It truly changed people to be very different. No one spoke about killing themselves, and most people stopped self-harming, and life down Church Square and at the base never was the same again. After a few months of not being allowed out and having nothing but wallowing in my own self-pity and throwing myself heavily into my art, arts and hobbies is actually what got me through it. It wasn't family, friends, or even iceberg lettuce. And now I've found that hobbies, especially creative, expressive ones, are my go-to no matter what my emotions, bad or good, but especially on those bad days. Finding communities like the model-making painting community has once again changed my life for the better. But if you're wondering, after a few months I actually grew really close with a guy in college. He'd supported me so much, and mostly without even knowing it. We'd started dating, and I got my old room and my things back. I was allowed to go out again, which was mostly with Midge in his classic mini, going out hanging out at Warhammer and dress up and did LARP. Was introduced to D&D, and I was heavily into my art and crazy outfits and hair and 43 piercings, 7 tattoos, insane amount of friends. So much so that the police had to shut down my 17th birthday due to 200 people in my garden wasn't acceptable. The rule being that everyone had to bring me a birthday card to get in, and it took me the entire Christmas holidays to go through them all. It was an insane time, a time to be alive, but I constantly kept remembering that someone who was missing. College life suited me. I started to become my own person, and my grandparents didn't want me living with them, but knew I had nowhere else to go, so they bought a caravan and stuck it on the drive, and I lived there, which was a whole host of other issues, especially when I set it on fire. But that's a story for another time. I grew up. I lost a lot of my piercings. I lived and travelled all over the UK, and I've had boyfriends and girlfriends and been alone. I experienced extreme highs, incredible lows, anxiety, depression, chronic health conditions. I met some most incredible, amazing people, and sadly I've lost some of those amazing people too. But ultimately, this one guy made me feel like I could do anything, and then I decided to live for him, and then live for me, and now I want to help others who have lost or feeling alone. So here we are, 20 years on, and I'm still mourning that loss. I wonder how others are doing today. I think about Georgie and her sister Beth and their family. I think about Will's family and about Polly, Emma, TT, Ali, Ellie, Sarah, Ringo, and about Alex and Sven, Jack, Tom, Kate, Pingu, Andy, Aaron, Mouse and her sister Pearl, Spanner, Phil, Kopi, Jason, KTR, Matty, Jack, Leanne, Laura, Joe, Paul, Carl, Jessica, Eggy, Little John, Liam, Joe, Katie, Helen, Emmy, Lauren, JD, Kid, Purple Helen, Ed, Johnny B and John B, Joe P, Bods, Jotham, Declan, Nat, Danny P, Joe, Steve, Ty or Jess as they're now known, Chip, Rob, Kyle T, Brad, Tom, Billy, Brian, Brett, Maisie, Jenny, Lee, Kerry, Becky, Emmeline, Adam, Carl, Kirsty, Rachel, Pete, Lee, Milo, Christopher, Smiley, and his twin, Aaron, Amy, Vicky, Becky, Baker, Tigger, Jessica, Dan, Adam, Rob, Mally, Tyler, Craig M, Joy, Jack, Chloe, Kyle, Dave, Jade, Jamie, Big Ben, John Boy, Melvin and his sister Emma, Podge, Cameron, Jenny, Stacy, Dino, Kim, Nim, Hannah, Sharky, Gary, Bob, and his brother Carl, Dempsey and his sister Jess, Emo, Will, Jim Bob, Big Jamie, IHEP, Danny, Sid, Diz, Gemma, Mike, Crawford, Big Dave, Shippo, Fennel, and his sister Sammy, Gemma, Simon, Callum S, Kevin, James, Joey, Kit, Will Crow, the triplets, Laura, Paula, and Katie, Phil, Jean, Midge and his brother Tristan, just to name a few, and of course, Will, Debbie, Skippy, Goody, Jan, Stacy, rest in peace. I truly hope you know that you're not alone. Find a hobby, find a passion, find a community, find a friend or a partner, or come find me. Linktree, awitchesminis.